Okay, today I was going to try to write a simple backbeat or groove tune in real time. I'm going to start with a simple chord progression, a simple melody, and maybe a bass figure, and just see if we can make something quickly that's effective and fun to blow on. So the first thing I'm going to do for this particular method is just come up with a simple progression. So oftentimes I like starting with melody, and in this case we're going to start with harmony, so we're going to start with a chord progression. It's going to be pretty arbitrary. I'm going to start with G minor 7, G minor 9. That's going to be the first chord, so I'll just put that in my chart. So I have to come up with a second chord. I'm going to go to a dominant chord of some type. So let's try some different dominant chords. We'll try a bunch randomly and see if we find one we like. That would be 1 to 5. 1 to flat 6, 7. 1 to natural 6, 7. A flat 7 up a half step. So sub 5, 7 of 5. Flat 2, 7. B flat 7. B7. That's nice. I'm thinking I might like that. To B7. Like a B7 kind of altered sound. All right, let's do 2 bars, and then we'll go to 2 bars on the. Let's make it B altered. Well, we could go to E minor, which would be obvious, right? So then we'd have G minor to B altered. To E minor. That works fine. Let's do it. Try not to overthink this too much. So far I'll just have 2 bars on each chord. So then we're on E minor 9. If we went up a major third again and did the same. So that would be going up a major third from E minor to A flat or G sharp 7, and then go into C sharp or D flat minor. It could work, just kind of keeping it similar, but let's make it different. G minor, B altered to E minor. Let's go to a major chord next. So maybe E flat major. So E minor. So let's try F major. E minor, F sharp major. E minor, A flat major. That's kind of nice. So E minor to A flat major. All right, let's do that. I like that. Again, just 2 bars each on this. Make that a major 7 sharp 11. All right, let's listen to that. So now we have G minor 9, B altered to E minor to A flat major. This is A half to D7, I was thinking. Back to G minor. Pretty easy if we do that. So from A flat major up a half step to A half diminished to D altered back to G minor. Create a nice kind of 10-bar phrase. We do a bar each on that, but I feel like that turnaround's pretty obvious. So if we're going to already do the turnaround and make it a short, very short tune, 10 bars, maybe a different, instead of A half to D7, this may be a different sort of a turnaround. But if we do more of a blues turnaround, so E flat 7 to D altered to G minor. See what that sounds like. So G minor, just make it 2 bars on each of those so it doesn't, it's maybe not quite as interesting, but I feel like it'll just be really simple. So A flat major for 2 to E flat 7. I'm not liking it too much, actually. Yeah, maybe just going straight to D altered from the A flat. That's what we'll do. All right, so that's our progression. Super simple. We've got 5 chords. It's a 10-bar tune. Let's play through the chords one last time. G minor, B altered, to E minor, to A flat major, to D altered, back to G minor. All right, so maybe like a little bass vamp just for the G minor part. Yeah, we could put it in 7 instead, just cut off a beat. Might make it slightly more interesting. Let's try that. So we'll put it in 7. So now we'll write in the bass figure. The bass figure will just be for the G minor. So we've got a simple bass line, and obviously if we bring this to a band, the bass player may have some suggestions for the bass figure rhythmically or note choice that's better. I always ask any bass player I've hired what they think, if the bass line could be improved, you know, if they've got a better idea, and they usually do, because they play bass and they're much more familiar with good bass lines. But at least we have a starting point and that we can write over. Okay, so now we have a form and we have a little bass figure, so all we got to do now is write a melody. Oftentimes I write the melody and the chords simultaneously. Other than that, I usually write the melody first. But sometimes for a simple groove sort of tune, I'll start with the chords, just starting with something that's easy to blow over, easy to improvise on, fun to play, something the band can easily sight read on a gig. You don't need to rehearse. This is a consideration that I've taken to heart as I've gotten older, is just having songs that are easy enough to bring to a band without a rehearsal. Just because since I work full-time teaching, I don't often have enough time to rehearse a band. If you have the luxury of a touring band or an actual rehearsed band, then you can really start to write hard pieces that are more involved, that have all sorts of sections and interludes and segues, and you can get more artistic and poetic with your writing. Okay, let's come up with a melody. So we've got a somewhat busy bass line, so the melody doesn't need to be very busy in the first 2 bars. We could even just be long tones. Let's see, the bass line. The bass line uses quite a few of the notes of the Dorian scale. I feel like this is kind of a Dorian sound since we have that flat 7 and natural 6. So I could use the melody note, could maybe be the 11, which is not inside of the bass figure. And the minor third could also work. Okay. Could do a 4 to 3 melody. That could be the melody, kind of like Freddie the Freeloader. Alright, very easy melody. Just have it be this 4-3 idea, or 11 to 3, 11 to minor 3. So we'll write that in. Alright, and we're in 7. So I'll just have it be 3.5 beats so that the note changes right after the bass lands on the G. So we'll have a little bit of a syncopation there. And it might make it slightly rhythmically a little more interesting. I could also have it repeat the melody twice or not. Let's think about that. Let's have Finale play it once and see if we like it. A little fast. Let's slow that down. I want to change the bass figure now. I want that G to only last a beat. So this is generally how writing goes. Start listening back to it and start editing it a little bit. Let's listen to how that sounds. I don't like it. I'm going to go back to 4/4. I think the bass figure feels too forced to be in 7. Okay, so I've put the bass figure back into 4. I do want it to have 4 bars on the G minor, so more like a blues, even though the rest of the tune isn't quite blues. Okay, let's listen to that. So the melody, I have it repeating twice now. Let's see if that works. So I have maybe doing it. And now the second melody is exactly like Freddie the Freeloader. So I'll just steal that basically. And I could make those notes harmonized. Yeah, maybe in 4th, that might sound good. Or 6th. So maybe at some point putting some harmony on those notes, those longer notes. So let's think about where the melody goes from there. That could work. Pretty simple melody, that could work quite well. All right, so I'm hearing this little pickup. All right, so I'm kind of hearing this melody. Okay, so we've got Otto, 1, 2, 3, 4. Otto, 1, 2. Yeah, I think that works. Some ideas here. Now keep in mind we can always just keep editing and adding and subtracting to the melody until we are absolutely convinced of it. If I had enough piano skills, I would just keep that ostinato going in the left hand, but right now me trying to do that will be a distraction. Could get clear up to the 9 there on the A flat major, but that sounds, I'm not really hearing it do that. I'm hearing back to this major 7 on the A flat. super interesting because we went to the G on the B7, going back to the G again, but it is a groove tune, so the repetition might be a little more forgiving in this context. So this melody should technically be down 1 octave. So used to playing saxophone, I write everything up at octave. Let's hear how this sounds here now that I've put in some bass notes. Again, the bass player could still vary it, but let's see if we can apply the same rhythm and keep the bass ostinato going. So let's think about it. It sounds a little different on altered to use the same exact bass figure. What if we did it a tritone away, so we basically do like an F7 bass line over the B altered, which is now making it more like F Lydian dominant. Allow us to keep the exact same bass line going. I like that B in the bass, so I'm going to keep it. We'll use the same bass figure, just make it altered. So now I've put the same bass line in. This might be overkill, but let's just see how it sounds. I'm not really liking it. Actually, I'm liking it on the E minor, because since we have the G minor bass figure and then doing the same figure on the E minor, but I don't like it on the rest of it. Just going to give the bass player slash chords so they can play whatever they want. All right, let's see how it sounds. We've gotten rid of the bass part, but we have added the bass part on the E minor. As cliche as it is, I just want it to go to 2 bars of G minor at the end of the form before going back to the top. It might even be 4 bars at the end, but I think it's just 2. Yep, 4 bars. It means I could maybe do 1 more chord at the end to get us back to the top. See if there's another chord that can fit over the same bass figure. Anything that will fit. Nothing other than other forms of G minor. I could have the bass. I could have the bass pause on the G, and then we could have a D flat major 7 sharp 11 over G. So it'd be. That's kind of cool. Maybe I can give them also a note there. Just back to C, I think would be great. We have to imagine that the intro has just been played, the vamp, now we're coming in with a melody. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I mean perfect might be exaggeration, but that's good. Also, I think on the E minor, I'm going to get rid of the ending of that bass figure. The pause is nice. This will work with kind of either like a straight 8th feel or a backbeat. These kinds of tunes, I just bring them to the band and let the drummer come up with a good beat for it. At this point, I just would clean up the chart and come up with a title. Okay, so this is basically, spent about an hour on this tune. I've got myself a little tune, and hopefully it gives you some helpful insight into one process for writing music. It's got a couple dominant chords, a couple major chords, and 2 minor chords, so fairly well balanced harmonically. Okay, I hope you found that interesting and helpful. My name is Matt Otto. I'm a tenured professor at Kansas University. If you enjoyed the video or got some value from it, please leave a comment. And thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.